The Holy Quran states, "O you who believe, fasting is prescribed for you, as it was prescribed for those before you, so that you may be God conscious." Chapter 2, verse 183. On behalf of this mosque, Masjid-e-Ali, I would like to welcome each and every one of you to this institution, as well as to tonight's special program. We gather together to exchange words of wisdom and to enjoy dinner together in honor of not only this holy month of Ramadan, but of our diverse community as well. As God states in His holy book, "O mankind, we created you from a male and female and made you into nations and tribes so that you may get to know each other." Events like these are especially crucial in the wake of devastating tragedies that we are facing and witnessing today. These acts of terror, including the Orlando shooting, the Charleston, South Carolina shooting, which, by the way, the 1-year anniversary was yesterday, the San Bernardino event, Colorado Springs, and countless of other domestics and global crimes against humanity. These are not just attacks on one person, one individual, or one group of people. Rather, they are attacks on us collectively as a human race. An event like this serves as a reminder that our diversity makes us flourish and helps us appreciate that we are not just a melting pot, but in the words of President Jimmy Carter, a beautiful mosaic. To officially begin tonight's program, let me invite Brother Hamid Teherani to recite select verses of the Holy Quran. Please help me welcome him to the front with a round of applause, please.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. واعتصموا بحبل الله جميعا ولا تفرقوا واذكروا نعمة الله واعتصموا بحبل الله جميعا ولا تفرقوا واذكروا نعمة الله واذكروا نعمة الله عليكم إذ كنتم أعداء فألف بين قلوبكم فأصبحتم بنعمته إخوانا الله أكبر ولله الحمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب ربنا إنك جامع الناس ليوم لا ريب فيه إن الله لا يخلف الميعاد ربنا إنك جامع الناس ليوم لا ريب فيه إن الله لا يخلف الميعاد صدق الله العلي العظيم.
Thank you, Brother Hamid, for that very heartwarming recitation of the Holy Quran. Let me translate to you all what he has recited. Brother Hamid recited chapter 3, verses 103, verses 8, and verses 9, which translates as follows. In the name of God, the All-Beneficent, the All-Merciful. And hold firmly to the rope of God, all together, and do not become divided. And remember that the favor of God upon you when you were enemies, and he brought your hearts together, and you became, by his favor, brothers. And you were on the edge of the pit of the fire, and he saved you from it. Thus does God make clear to you his verses, so that you may be guided. Our Lord, let not our hearts deviate after you have guided us, and grant us from yourself mercy. Indeed, you are the bestower. Our Lord, surely you will gather the people for a day about which there is no doubt. Indeed, God does not fail in his promise. And the words of God are truth. Sadaqallahu al-Aliyul Azim. Let me proceed to the next segment of our program. We are truly blessed to have amongst us a variety of guest scholars, speakers, individuals from including lawmakers, senators, very prominent people in our community, and I would like to thank you from the bottom of my heart for joining us in tonight's program. Let me introduce our first speaker, who is Reverend Kazi Newish. He is a graduate of Princeton Theological Seminary, and since July 2008, the pastor at 6 Mile Run Reformed Church in Franklin Park. Ordained by the Presbytery of Philadelphia, Pastor Kazi served Ben Salem Presbyterian Church in Buck County for 10.5 years prior to being called to Franklin Township. He has been married to his wife Julia for 36 years, which is next month, by the way. Their 2 children are now married, and they are the proud grandparents of 1 granddaughter with another grandchild on the way. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Reverend Newish.
Great. That's all you need to know. That we are grandparents and we have a beautiful granddaughter. That's right. I can't tell you how grateful and honored and humbled I was when Alex asked me if I would come and share a few words, particularly since he asked me to speak from my Christian perspective. And so I do that with a lot of pride and humility, knowing that I am here in front of some very pious and devoted people. He asked me to say something about, from my perspective, about what Jesus taught about love and compassion and unity. And I thought, how am I going to do all that in 10 minutes? He gave me 10 minutes, but don't look at your watches now. I appreciate the efforts of this organization to create unity and understanding among all the people of faith and neighbors here in Franklin Township. You are a great example to all of us. And I thank you for your hospitality to me and my wife. Opening one's house to friends is always enjoyable. Opening one's house to strangers is always risky. Opening your hearts to another's views can sometimes be transformational. I hope that the risk you take tonight is enjoyable and that it does begin a transformation in our community. When I think about risk, I think of a member of my church's choir who travels to Camden every day to teach high school. He drives his car from Cranberry to Bordentown. He takes a train then to Camden, carrying his bicycle on his shoulder. Then he takes a bicycle and he rides it for 1 mile to the high school. And then at the end of the day, he does it backwards. I've asked him, aren't you afraid? Don't you know that Camden is the top city in our state with the highest rate of violent crimes? And he replied, no, I go when there's lots of light and there's lots of people around. Okay, that's good. Nothing has ever happened to you. No, I feel pretty safe. Good. So, well, not everybody is so lucky. You may have heard about the Franklin teacher on her way to Philadelphia, who chose to take the scenic view through Camden, and at a red light, some thugs pulled her out of her car, beat her, stabbed her, robbed her, and took her car. They left her on the sidewalk, oblivious to whether she lived or died. The news report mentioned that the head of the cardiothoracic surgery at Cooper University Hospital, rather in Camden, was in the middle of his early morning jog when he noticed from a distance the defensive wounds in the victim's hands and arms, but judging by the amount of blood from the exit wound, he figured a well-trained surgeon would have that fixed in about 20 minutes. Unfortunately, he had 4 other surgeries to do that morning, so he couldn't stop. But he tried dialing 911, but he had no bars. A few minutes later, the preacher of a large church in town happened to be driving by. He also saw the wounded woman, but he was late for a prayer breakfast where he had been asked to speak about the church's excellent feeding program for the homeless. He would have called 911, but he had just preached a sermon about the dangers of driving and texting. Not long after that, a person that people knew was on the no-fly list, who had been interviewed by the FBI several times and thought to have some connections to some radical groups, he also saw the woman, and he stopped. Immediately, he knew that she needed help. He managed to pull her around his shoulders, climbed into his motorcycle, and he drove her to the nearest urgent care. Of course, there they wouldn't touch her because, well, they don't do that in a duck in the box. That's what my brother-in-law, the doctor, my brother calls them. No, you can't do that. You have to go to a hospital. So he brought her to the nearest hospital emergency room where he couldn't provide any information about the wounded person. They had lots of questions about him and his involvement. They asked for some official identification, proof of citizenship, some credit card information. And while all that was being processed, the policeman on duty called the station because he feared that there may have been some radical involvement here with other elements. A patrol car came and those officers asked him to accompany them to the station. There they ran his information through every database. They questioned him for several hours and finally let him go. He went back to check on the patient at the hospital, but privacy laws prevented anyone from telling him anything. Now the question for us is which one of the 3, the doctor, the preacher, the dubious character, who would you say acted best in that situation? That's a fictional story, of course, made up just like the story that Jesus told when a person asked him, who is my neighbor? Jesus was a great storyteller. He taught by means of dramatic stories or sometimes very common stories. My version tonight works as a modern version of that most famous of stories that everybody knows as the parable of the... We teach it to our children really early on. You want to hear exactly how it goes? Yes, my colleague, Pastor George, come on. You can tell that story just as Jesus would have told it 2,000 years ago.
One day, a lawyer stood up to test Jesus. "Teacher," he said, "what must I do to inherit eternal life?" Jesus said to him, "What is written in the law? What do you read there?" He answered, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself." Jesus said to him, "You have given the right answer. Do this, and you will live." But wanting to justify himself, he asked Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" So Jesus replied, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell into the hands of robbers, who stripped him, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. Now by chance a priest was going down that road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. So likewise a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, while traveling, came near him, and when he saw him, he was moved with pity. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, having poured oil and wine on them. Then he put him on his own animal, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii, gave them to the innkeeper, and said, "Take care of him, and when I come back I will repay you whatever more you spend." Now which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers? He said, "The one who showed mercy." Jesus said to him, "Go and do likewise."
In Jesus' story, the third person was a Samaritan. That was the person who did the compassionate thing at great personal cost, where the 2 previous ones, the most respected people in society, would not. My apologies to doctors and preachers here for my characterization, but you would understand that the influential people of Jesus' days were not very excited about his portrayal of the respected figures of the priest and Levite, which would explain why he met the violent end that he did. And just as we are bothered by the possibility of having to say that this dubious character should be the person that we should learn from, in Jesus' day, none of the people who heard him tell that story would have put those 2 words together. There was no good Samaritan. For Jewish people living in Jerusalem, the mention of a Samaritan made their noses twitch and sent shivers down their spines. They wanted to make sure everybody knew that there was a difference. We're not like them, even though they shared very common roots. For some Jewish zealots, the only good Samaritan was a dead Samaritan. The world that Jesus painted in this story was far from the world people knew. No one listening to that story would entertain for a moment the idea that a Samaritan could be capable of that much compassion, or that he would put himself through so much trouble to do the right thing for a perfect stranger. But Jesus chose a way of living that was already a living of the desired outcome. And with one simple story, Jesus has challenged Christians for 2,000 years and inspired probably 1 million different sermons to make us consider who my neighbor is. The neighbor is always a person who is in need. The nearest person to me in need. That's my neighbor. Also to consider what a good neighbor is. Well, the one who offers help is the good neighbor. And the third one is probably who my enemy is. Because it's so easy to dehumanize one's enemy. to believe all the propaganda you hear, to accept all the stereotypes, to ignore the possibility that the enemy may be motivated by the same beliefs, values, and virtues that motivate our actions. We live in difficult days. There is much suffering inflicted on innocent people due to prejudice, hate, and evil, of course. The Bible teaches me that God sees the plight of the innocent. Jesus taught us that God's heart breaks over deranged acts of violence. Our experience has taught us that the forces of evil and hate despise love and compassion. But Jesus' optimism is clear in a story that shows how love and compassion, risk-taking compassion, stubborn and refuse to stay dead compassion, will triumph in the end. Hopelessness may well be the worst enemy. Jesus chose a way of living that was already a living of the desired outcome. We need to hold on to love and compassion. We want to be good neighbors. We want to make sure that we do not fall for easy characterizations of who the enemy is. I'd like to offer a prayer. It's an adaptation of a prayer that I saw from the president of a Presbyterian seminary, but it spoke to me this week, and I think that when people pray together, God hears. O God, the only true source of wholeness and peace, in a world bearing fresh wounds, we ask for your help and guidance. As we move through this hard time, endow us with the compassion to embrace all our neighbors, the courage to bear one another's burdens, and hearts unafraid to weep with those who weep. As we consider our response to the tragedies we have witnessed, save us from the desire for vengeance or from the temptation to place easy blame. Help us not to be among those who pass unmoved by, but help us to take positive steps, real steps, bold steps towards preventing suffering. Let the vision of your prophet guide us to seek good for all people and overcome evil with good. We ask, O Lord, that you will pour a balm on us and help our society to heal, for you alone are our refuge and strength, our help in time of trouble. And as a community, help us to show in our lives and actions that goodness is stronger than evil, love is stronger than hate, light is stronger than darkness, hope is stronger than despair, life is stronger than death. Amen.
He serves as one of the directors and is the vice president of this mosque. He also serves as president of Franklin Township Interfaith Council, the president of Razi Health Foundation of New York, the board of trustee member of Franklin Township's Dr. Martin Luther King Community Foundation, a member of the Human Relations Committee, and a member of the Franklin Township Planning Board. He puts my CV to shame completely. Dr. Kazi is an active member of the community, promoting strong relation and understanding among various faiths. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Dr. Asr Alex Kazi.
Thank you, Mustafa. And Pastor, thank you so much. Wonderful. Dear respected scholars, dignitaries, guests, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum. Peace be with you. As I look around this hall, I see people of different colors, different nationalities, and different faiths. And indeed, we are blessed to live in this part of the country, especially in Franklin Township, which has over 60 houses of worship. During the last couple of weeks, 2 events took place that touched our hearts. The first one was loss of Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali, the great champion of our time, not only was one of the greatest boxers, but he was truly a great human being and a good Muslim. He touched so many people's lives. He helped so many people. and the needy. He promoted social justice, and he showed love and mercy. He was a proud Muslim and practiced what a true Islam is all about. Then we also had a tragedy in Orlando. He also apparently was a Muslim. But what he did, there was nothing holy or Islamic about it. Over 85 Muslim organizations and centers in New Jersey alone issued press releases condemning the act of terror. We held vigil to honor the victims and prayed for the survivors and the family members. We hold the victims of this tragedy and their families in our hearts and prayers. Their grief is our grief. Their fear is our fear. We all are one family. We were saddened even more as we had just started the holy month of Ramadan, a month of giving, sharing, loving, and caring. And yes, we are afraid and concerned about the safety of our center and our children. Potential backlash and more hate and discrimination towards Muslims and those who may look like Muslims. Our first Imam, son-in-law of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and fourth Caliph, has said that you are either brothers in faith or equal in humanity. That is the principle we believe in. Our holy book clearly states that killing one soul is like killing the entire nation, and saving one soul is like saving the entire nation. Every day we greet each other with Assalamu alaikum, wishing each other peace. And among the very names of God are compassionate and merciful, and is repeated again and again every day, reminding us that we need to be compassionate and merciful. Thousands of years ago, before Geneva Convention, our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, orders his soldiers not to harm women, children, elderly, priests, and houses of worship. In our holy book, every time there's a word salat means praying, it's followed by zakat meaning charity. This is the kind of Islam we have learned. This is the kind of Islam we have taught our children, and this is the kind of Islam we practice. Love, tolerance, mercy, respect to others, and helping the needy. Even in the face of tragedy, the holy month of Ramadan gives us hope and the faith that we can come together as Americans and focus on what unites us. Thank you for coming today and sharing a meal with our community. Let's pray for peace, that one day everyone can go to a place of his or her choice, be a mosque, a church, a temple, a club, or just a park, without any fear and intimidation. Let us pray for a day that not only we tolerate each other, but we love each other. Now I'd like to share a story on a brighter side. This happened on Monday, the day after the tragedy. I was sitting in the office and one of our community members came to me and said that a man left a bag and a note on the door. So my heart raced. I said, I hope it's not a hate note. So as I looked at the transparent bag, I saw some apples, a couple of bananas, some date, a bag of coffee. Then I looked at the note, and I looked at the note, it was from a veteran. I'd like to share that letter that he left with you. My name is Jake Meyer. I'm a Veterans for Peace member and the local New Jersey, New York City organizer for the Veterans Challenge Islamophobia campaign. I'm reaching out to let Muslim community leaders like yourself know that I and my fellow veterans support and stand with you during this trying time and as we move forward together. If you need anything, please do not hesitate to call me. May the light that we celebrate at Ramadan show us the way and lead us together on the path of peace and social harmony. Wishing you a very happy Ramadan Mubarak. Jake Meyer. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm so happy to let you know that Jake is sitting among us. Jake, would you please stand up? Thank you very much. Thank you, Jake. And his mother is sitting here also. Thank you so much. Thank you for having such a wonderful son. Today is our 6th annual Interfaith Iftar dinner, and we are happy to see so many dignitaries and leaders and our members. So among our people that sit in here, we have our Mayor Phil Kramer, just sitting right here. Mayor. We have Edison Mayor Thomas Lanke, just sitting right behind him. And we have State Commissioner Pandra Chivakola, please. And in the back, standing, we have Deputy Chief Richard Grammer. Thank you very much, Deputy. We have several members of our council. We have Councilman Rajiv Prasad sitting right there. And we also have Councilman Richard Charles Onijianka. Charles, are you there? There you go. And I know Councilwoman Roz Sherman was planning to be here, and probably she's going to be coming. And Kimberly Francois also was planning to be here. We have 2 candidates. One is for sheriff, and I saw Lieutenant Russo. Would you stand up, Lieutenant? Thank you. And we also have Dr. Maria Rodriguez, who is candidate for Somerset County Freeholder. Dr. Rodriguez, they're right there. We have representatives from several organizations. We have Board of Education. We have the President of Board of Education, Ed Potesnik. Ed. And we have the Vice President, Nancy LaCourte, sitting right there. We have some members of Dr. Martin Luther King Foundation, including the President, Mrs. Eva Naj. And I don't think Mike Harris has made it in, but he's coming. He is a member of the Human he's not only a member of the Franklin Township Martin Luther King, but also Chamber of Commerce. He's the president of Franklin Township Chamber of Commerce. We have members of JFK Club, our own John sitting right there. We have many leaders from various houses of worship, so if I may just ask them to stand up, please. Representative leaders. Thank you. We have Chief COE and Director of American Muslim for Hunger Relief. And Brother Zabir Hassan is somewhere here. I think I saw him. Oh, right, he is there, right there. And we also have other members from Muslim League of Voters, American Muslim for Democracy, and American Muslim Council, CARE, New Jersey Muslim Water Projects, and I believe Dr. Jonathan Golden is here from, he's the director of Center on Religion, Culture, and Conflict of Drew University. I don't know if he's arrived yet, but if not, he will be here. And we have many of our neighbors. That's the beautiful thing. I have one of my neighbors just sitting right here. Thank you so much for coming with all your family. And a couple of reporters we have, of course. We have Franklin reporter Bill is standing right there. Bill, thank you very much. And we have TV Asia, I believe, also with us. Before we present some recognition award for those that have unified our community, and they're working to unify our community. And I see Lori Murray from the Board of Education sitting right there. Moore's there. Thank you.
And love, and he continues to do that. But I am extremely honored by this, as I was that night, and somewhat shocked. My wife, by the way, has always been a queen, as far as I'm concerned. And gentlemen, I advise you to treat your wives that way. I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting me. I'm honored to be here. I'm honored to receive this award. This is perhaps the 10th time I've been in this mosque, and I'm always thrilled to come. This event is what America that I've always believed in is about. This event is not simply titled Iftar or Ramadan Iftar, but the Interfaith Iftar. Why? Because the organizers, and in fact everyone here, gets it. We get that we live in a diverse community, but it is one community. And if we do not look for and strive for ways to unite, we are vulnerable to the forces around us that want to divide us. We have recently in this country, once again, sadly, been exposed to an individual who chose to demonstrate his hate towards one minority group. And now we are exposed to those who want to use his actions to increase animosity towards another group. It all has to stop. And it needs to begin to stop with all of us. I believe the people at this event are enlightened. The fact that you are willing to be at an interfaith iftar means you are enlightened. The fact that you chose to honor a Jew at an interfaith iftar means you are enlightened. But we need to go further, and I will challenge you. Because most of us are members of some kind of minority, and we want our minority respected. Logically, that means we need to respect all other minorities. The world is changing quickly, and sometimes new concepts are uncomfortable and challenging. Sometimes they are in opposition to what we have long believed. But if a group is a group that preaches love and community and seeks to hurt no one, then they deserve to be safe among us and to be accepted. Society gets more and more complicated every day. I hope I have the wisdom and strength to meet new challenges with an open mind and an open heart. And it is people like the people who choose to be here tonight who can lead the way to one community. So Franklin can continue to be a place of respect and love. Now tonight seems to be a night of stories, and I will tell my story about a group that some may have some difficulty accepting, but I think it is important that we accept them. 40 years ago, I was in college, and I was attracted to a woman. That woman turned out to be a lesbian, and she told me, and it was my choice to accept her or not. Well, to tell that long story from 40 years ago, my friend Ed Potasnik was at my house for a party this afternoon, and he met that woman who I'm still friends with 40 years later. She saved me from 4 decades of not knowing, of not caring, and allowed me to learn about the importance of that group and the recognition of that group. And that may be hard for some people to accept. It may be hard for you to accept if your son or daughter is a member of that group. But it is the kind of acceptance that we need, that has been important to me for 4 decades. And it is the kind of thing to realize that if you are a minority that wants to be accepted, and there's another minority out there that preaches love and compassion, then please open your hearts, open your minds, and accept them as you accept me here tonight, and you are a community of love. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. And remember, we are either brothers in faith or equal in humanity. Our second recipient is one of our faith leaders in our township. Every day at noon and 6 p.m. sharp to the second, I hear from my house the beautiful sound of church bell. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to recognize Pastor George Montereni for his leadership role and dedication to promote unity and harmony among various faiths. And I would like to request Dr. Parviz Hamadani and Maulana Suleiman to come forward to present this award. Now, George, come on, please. Let me tell you a little bit about George. Pastor George has been pastor of Middle Bush Reformed Church since January 2003. Prior to coming to Franklin Township, he served as the pastor for a Native American congregation in rural southwestern Oklahoma for 12 years. In his 10 years of service here in Franklin, he has been active in interfaith relationship. He led the National Day of Prayer services for several years, was an organizer for the initial formation of Franklin Township Interfaith Council, and helped organize and moderate several of the interfaith dialogue events which were part of Week of the People celebration. He has spoken at interfaith gatherings hosted by other houses of worship and has hosted interfaith guests to speak to adult groups at Middle Bush Reformed Church. He says, though our faiths may be different in certain respects, the two facts that we are people of faith and also that we are neighbors mean that we have much in common. How wonderful to show the world that people of all faiths can be good neighbors for one another, as we are here in Franklin, able to respect, talk with, and learn from one another. Pastor George is joined tonight by his wife Marianne and by several members of Middle Bush congregation. You know, Islam puts a great emphasis, like all other faiths, on helping the needy. I'm honored to recognize two organizations tonight. I request Sir Nahid Hamadani, one of the executive committee members, and Dr. Asad Sadiq, if he is here. If not, Dr. Iqbal Jaffrey, to come forward to, and also Pastor Osei, I'd like to come forward, and Mayor Kramer to join me to present these recognition awards. Ladies and gentlemen, we are honored to recognize Mr. Zamir Hassan, the founder of a grassroots movement called Muslim Against Hunger Project, which has now evolved into Face Against Hunger. And invite also Mrs. Nancy LaCour to come forward to receive the recognition award on behalf of Franklin Food Bank. Let me tell you a little bit about the Muslim Against Hunger. Muslim Against Hunger project started in year 2000 and now serves 30 plus locations across the United States, Canada, Pakistan, and India. In 2011, Mr. Zamir started a mobile soup kitchen program known as Hunger Van, which brings food and other basic needs to homeless and needy in the street. In 2016, Mr. Zamir opened the first ever halal, kosher, and vegan daily soup kitchen program called One World Community Cafe, a place to meet and break bread with neighbors and community at large. One World Community Cafe also serves as a daily shelter for homeless, senior citizens, and those in need. Last year, here's the good part, last year he served 300,000 meals. And this year their goal is to increase 1,000 a day for 365,000 meals. So Mr. Zamir Hassan is also a 2014 winner of Raspberry Foundation of New Jersey Unsung Heroes Making a Difference Award, and in 2016 featured in a Raspberry Foundation video as Idealist. And he joined us now. The second one is our own food bank, Franklin Food Bank. It used to be Franklin Township Food Bank, and some people confused. They thought that's part of Franklin Township. So, but now they've changed the name to Franklin Food Bank, but it's the same place, same people. They have a tagline which says, "Neighbors helping neighbors." So Franklin Food Bank has served the community for the last 40 years. In 2015 alone, they provided food for over 2,000 families and over 2,300 children and 278 seniors. They distributed over 11,000 food packages and processed over 1,100,000 pounds of food in their warehouse. Now, besides the recognition award, I'm happy to let them know that for each one of them, for their organization, we have a check from our community, a donation of $1,000 each. Our final recipient actually is someone from out of town. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to recognize Reverend Dr. Anari Grizel for her leadership role and dedication to serve patients, families, and staff of JFK Medical Center and promote unity and harmony among diverse faiths. I would like to request Mayor, would you please come? And Dr. Abda Jafari, are you here? There she is there. To come forward to present this award with me. But while they're coming, I'd like to say a few words about her. So she has been Dr. Grizel has been the Director of Pastoral Care for JFK Medical Center in New Jersey since 1996, where she supervises chaplain interns for all faith and where she develops hospital-community relationship. She developed a wide range of connections with various faith traditions and served as president of Metuchen Edison Area Interfaith Clergy Association. During this Ramadan, she collaborated with Peace Island Institute to co-host an iftar dinner and program at JFK Medical Center. As a native South African and chaplain for over 25 years, she brings an understanding and love of culturally and religiously diverse population, as was instrumental in bringing halal meat services to JFK Hospital to ensure Muslim patients and their families can enjoy halal meal.
In the name of God, the Beneficent, the Merciful, Assalamu alaikum, peace be with all of you, and thank you for the opportunity to be amongst you in this very inspiring gathering. Now, it is almost time to break the fast. I think we're running just a few minutes late. And those of you who may have familiarity with the month of Ramadan or may have been in a Muslim country in the month of Ramadan, you know that those last few minutes before the sun sets, that is when mayhem breaks loose, because people are going to prepare to finally break their fast after a day of hunger and thirst. And so I will shorten my remarks. If I can have those of you who are fasting or looking forward to a good meal, bear with me for a few moments. I have a very simple task. And that task is that it's inspiring, it's heartening, and it's very beautiful to see people from so many different faith communities come together. Different religions, different backgrounds, ethnicities, and maybe people from no faith community. And my task is that when you leave, I want all of you to be Muslims. That is my goal. And what I mean by that is the Quranic teaching, Inna ad-deena 'inda Allahi al-Islam. The only deen or devotion that Muslims believe is acceptable to God is Islam. Now there are two different interpretations that are given to that verse by Muslims. One is the label Muslim, which is a recognizable religious identity with certain beliefs and certain practices. And those who subscribe to that interpretation, they will sometimes use that as a means to think that Muslims have some sort of shortcut to divine pleasure, maybe a shortcut to heaven. We don't need to put in the same effort or have that same humility before God and before humanity that others might need to have. But there is another interpretation, which is both scholastically and spiritually more accurate. And this is that in Arabic, we don't have capital letters and we don't have small letters. And so Muslim in English is primarily a label of a religion. But in Arabic, it's a word that has a meaning. And the meaning of the word Muslim, derived from Islam, is to submit, not to fight against our conscience and what we know to be right. And according to this interpretation, it is a small m Muslim, or a small I Islam, that the Quran is calling humanity to. Which would mean that the only devotion or the only way of life that is acceptable to God is for us to submit to our minds and to our hearts and to our conscience. And that is an Islam that people of all faith traditions or no faith tradition can equally subscribe to. And after contemplation and study and prayer, if your heart determines that the religion of Islam and the teachings of the Blessed Prophet Muhammad are true, then God would want you to submit to that which your mind and your heart believes to be true. But as a Muslim, if somebody engages in that sincere struggle and that sincere effort to live a life that is true to their conscience, and they reach a different conclusion, then I owe it to God, and I owe it to the Quran to give them just as much respect for their decision and for their conscience as I would hope and expect them to give me for my decision. And I can say that they are a Muslim with a small m, as long as they are true to their beliefs and to their heart. That is the shared task that brings us together in an interfaith gathering like this, to try to ensure that that message that we need to create a society where a spiritual message is relevant to people and where people are able and have the resources and have the different houses of worship and places of meditation and contemplation and prayer and study available to them to make a good faith decision about what religion or what values or what ethics they want to live their life according to. That is a task that brings together all of us, and it is sometimes unfortunate that when you look at capital M Muslims, we sometimes find that they are not very good small m Muslims. If we don't have a good relationship with facts, if we can't be bothered to find out about other communities other than our own, and to find out about challenges that face our society, if climate change is not a concern for us, if poverty is not a concern for us, if other concerns that are part of our society are not relevant to us, then, and I'm speaking to my fellow Muslims here, if you are a capital M Muslim, you are not a small m Muslim. Because it cannot be possible to respect God and God's creation without having a connection to the creation of God, and a concern for the creation of God, and a respect for science, and for the wisdom that God has demonstrated within His creation of the cosmos and humanity. And sometimes we find that there are people who are not capital M Muslims, but they are very good small m Muslims. Because when they hear something that they didn't know, they don't say that, well, my religion or my culture or I already knew it, but they're willing to say, I'm glad I heard that, I learned something. That spirit is something that sometimes is difficult for us to adopt. Sometimes we forget about it when we are very firmly rooted within our identities. And that's why it's important for us to sometimes move outside of our identities and to bake bread and to learn from and listen to people from other communities. Because that doesn't weaken our own identity. And it doesn't weaken our own affiliation with our religion or faith community. It strengthens it, but more importantly, it grounds it in a meaningful and in a firm foundation. The final point that I want to make is that we had the senator who said that Islam is a religion of peace. It is a message of the Quran. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu dkhulu fis silmi kaffa. O you who believe, enter into peace altogether. It is sometimes a little bit of a mocked statement, though, that Islam is a religion of peace. All of you will probably be able to find people who say that we hear Islam is a religion of peace, but where is the peace in the life of the Muslim community or Muslim nations? And I want to just very briefly talk about that. If you look at the message of peace that Islam has, it's possible for us to look at ISIS. It's possible for us to look at individual acts of criminality or perhaps terrorism. But if you look at ISIS, for example, in Syria or in Iraq, you're probably familiar with the fact that they have destroyed many ancient houses of worship, monasteries, churches, historic sites, and mosques, and Muslim shrines. Well, those are societies that have been Muslim for 1400 years. Where did they get all those mosques and monasteries and churches if they hadn't been surviving and thriving within a Muslim country and a Muslim society for 1400 years? It is a tragedy when they are threatened, but it is also a testament to that civilization in those countries and the people of those countries of all religious persuasions, that they have preserved and honored all of those houses of worship and the communities that honor them for these many centuries. And so then where does the violence come from? Where does the aggression come from? Where does that absence of peace come from? Some will tell you that it's because they're Arabs, and Arabs are a violent people by nature. Some will tell you that it's because they're Muslims, and Muslims are a violent people by nature. Some might tell you that it's because they're men, and if the world had been governed by women, then we wouldn't have that terrorism and we wouldn't have that violence. And I would submit to you that whatever political or racial or religious or linguistic or ethnic or gender explanation you may wish to give, that probably tells you more about yourself than about the people that you are trying to describe and the narrative that you are trying to create. In reality, to understand all of those complex political and historical and spiritual influences that operate within a society, you have to get to know that society. And so I would like to add one statement to that statement of Ali ibn Abi Talib, the first Imam of the Shi'i Muslims and a saintly figure within the Islamic community. The statement that is on the screen is, "A person is either your brother in faith or your equal in humanity." That is a statement that he gave to his governor of Egypt, a country that had recently entered into the Muslim empire, but the vast majority of whose people were not Muslims. He also says, قُوتُ الْأَجْسَادِ الطَّعَامِ وَقُوتُ الْأَرْوَاحِ الْإِطْعَامِ. The sustenance of bodies is to eat, but the sustenance of the soul is to give others to eat and to feed. And that is what this event is about. To give sustenance, yes, to our bodies, but also to our souls. To share in a meal, and through that sharing, to learn about the faith, the beliefs, the values, and the priorities of our fellow human beings and our fellow believers. I hope that all of you have enjoyed this night and been inspired by this night as much as I have. And I pray for all of those present, for your families, and for our human family, that may God give us the opportunity to live in peace and to see a message of peace and compassion spread, and the voices of hatred and chauvinism that unfortunately we sometimes hear in this country and around the world, may those verses be drowned out by the voices of mercy and compassion. Thank you, and wassalamu alaikum.
Elaborate a little bit for the next couple of minutes that the masjid you are in is named after nobody else but the son-in-law of the Prophet of Islam, Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa, and his name was Ali. That's why we call this masjid Masjid-e-Ali. Ali and Muhammad, Prophet Muhammad, were two key figures in Islam. And I want to say this specifically, that as much as gone around to basically state that this is a religion of violence, I assure you, prove me by history or by any fact which you may have, that both of these people who led Islam, never in their history the swords were raised ever to oppress anyone. They only raised the swords when they had to defend themselves. We love and we respect all homes which belong to God, where there is priests and where people practice brotherhood, sisterhood. This particular mosque is open to everybody, from any faith, any school of thought, whether in Islam or outside, if you feel that you can come in and pray here. But the one important thing which I want to point out is, we are the oppressed. And I know this is a point which is a very difficult point to dissect and present, but the fact of the matter is, the grandson of the Holy Prophet, who is known as Imam Hussein, by the way, for those who are non-Muslims, it's got nothing to do with Saddam Hussein. He was brutally murdered in the sands of Karbala in Iraq, with 72 of his family members, children, as small as 6 months old. We are the people who have been oppressed. So when you talk about Muslims, I tell you, the majority of the Sunni Muslims, and that's one school of thought, within which there are several other schools of thoughts, and 100% of the Shia Muslims, apart from the small number which both Mrs. Clinton and Mr. Trump have alluded to already, who come from where, they have mentioned it clearly, these are not my words, their words, they have caused chaos. And the martyrdom of Imam Hussein, the martyrdom of Imam Ali, took place in the times when there was not an ISIS, but caliphs who ruled over there at the time, who basically were equivalent to what is the ISIS today. I can assure you as fellow Americans that we Muslims right now are undergoing a period of oppression more than maybe some of the other peoples of other faiths. I assure you that as Muslims, we support this country, the United States of America, which has given us this great opportunity to be in this land, and it's a great land to be in. And God bless this country. God bless you all. God bless America. Thank you very much for coming here today.